How do you go from this to this without ever picking up a piece of sandpaper? In this video, I'll share what causes these marks and the simple but 100% effective solution. The tips in this video will drastically reduce the amount of sanding you have to do, and in turn boost the amount of money you are putting in your pocket, like it did for me. Before I go any further, if you can feel the lines when you run your fingernail along the side of the edge of your project, this means you probably have a tramming problem, machine rigidity problem, collet problem, tool deflection problem, a chip in the tool problem, or your machine is missing steps. These are bigger problems that this trick probably won't solve. It may help, but it probably won't solve it. But it's very common for visible tool marks to be present even when you don't have one of these other problems going on. If this is the case, this trick is the key to a good product right off your CNC with limited sanding. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a formally trained machinist, nor am I trying to be, but rather just sharing what I've learned over the past 7 years. So by all means, if you have any tips or tricks, please share them in the comments below. So these tool marks on the side of our projects can be called a lot of different things. Like if you do marks on the side of your project, CNC, Google search, you're gonna come out with a bunch of terms. Sometimes they're referred to witness marks, waterline marks, or even tool deflection. Regardless of what you call them, the problem is marks are being left by your tool as it steps down and cuts through the full depth of your material. This is most common when you're doing a profile cut or a pocketing toolpath. So I wanted to jump in the internet and see what was actually happening. Like what is actually happening at those points at where it's leaving these lines. And so I did some research and I came across this response in a Vectric forum that I found really, really helpful. I'll leave a link down in the description so you can read the entire thread to this question, but this post sums it up well. They said, I think the water lines, while somewhat dependent on bit type, is just a normal effect. The tip edges of a square end mill must cut not only in a radial tangential direction like the rest of the flute, but also cut off some fibers in the axial direction. And I guess that may lead to more or different tear out. Obviously, that can be made worse with a dull bit or when the bit flexes a lot. So in other words, a CNC router bit needs to cut in all different directions because it moves up and down, left and right, back and forth, side to side, all directions. So you get different tear out or different fiber tear. I guess tear out's not the right word, but fiber shear. I'm sure there's some engineers out there, correct me for my wrong jargon, but fibers are shearing in different directions. And I think that's what we're seeing is the fibers are laid over in different directions based on the forces that are at play. So regardless of the technical information on how that mark is getting there, how do we fix it? Well, here is the simple trick I promised you. It's called Do Separate Last Pass. This is simply a box you can check in Vectric when setting up your toolpaths. This adds a full depth cleanup pass at the end of your toolpath. It works by cutting all of your step down toolpaths at the offset amount, which is typically 0.03. And I'll show you how to set that up here in a second. So basically your toolpath is cut with a 0.03 offset to the outside. And then for the very last pass, the finish pass to cut through your stock, it moves back over 0.03 inches and does one final pass to erase all the step down tool marks. I'm not sure if this feature is included in other CNC software, but Vectric is what I use and what I'm familiar with. And when I go through and tell you how to set this up, maybe you can apply that to your software or you can find a feature that is similar. So when setting up your typical profile toolpath to cut out the outer profile of your project, click the Do Separate Last Pass checkbox. Then set the offset to 0.03 inches. It's as simple as that. Now, if you can't find Do Separate Pass Last in the options in your toolpath setup, then you probably need to go to the top of your toolpath setup and click See Advanced Options or something along those lines. Sometimes it just gives you the simplified view, and this is considered an advanced setup option in Vectric. Okay, so let's preview what this is going to look like. So you can see the bit going around. It's doing that at a 0.03 offset. Then the last pass, it moves back to the original edge, goes to full depth, and does that last full depth cleanup pass. You can see the difference illustrated here by the light blue and green plunge lines. Also, over here on the left in the 2D view, you can see the step down last paths. The outer line is the step down paths, and the inner line is the last full depth cleanup pass. All right, so a couple quick tips on this is you need to make sure that your flute length of your bit is greater than the thickness of your material. If not, you won't get a very good result because the shank of your bit is rubbing inside your cut. And then also you can still use tabs with this feature. It won't cut your tabs off and ruin your project. It'll go up and over your tabs, but it'll still go to that full depth and do a final pass. I discovered this trick several years ago when I was making wholesale orders of 100 of these wooden trays. I remember dreading having to sand these and to finish these after I got them off the CNC because of all the sanding just to remove these lines. Not only was I happy that I didn't have to stand there and sand for hours, I was also happy about the reduced labor cost, and I was able to put more money into my pocket. So you may think, Andy, those lines aren't that big of a deal. They'll sand out really quick. But if you're doing this on wholesale orders and you're doing it by hand and you have to sand and touch 100 pieces that you otherwise wouldn't have to, the time really does add up. If you like learning from my mistakes like you did here, then you will love this video right here where I share the 7 mistakes I made when growing my CNC side hustle business. Click right here and I will see you in that video. Bye.